Going from a solo practice to a group practice is incredibly challenging. We're used to doing everything on our own, carrying the weight of the whole business on our shoulders, and wearing every single hat that there could possibly be. And then all of a sudden, we're faced with this opportunity to grow our team and to really expand our reach and take a lot of things off of our plate. But this can be a really tricky transition as you are hiring somebody, especially if they're going to be taking on clients. Well, today we have Eric Williams with Willity joining us to talk about making that transition in a way that is really beneficial and really seamless in your business. My name is Craig, and I'm the CEO of Daisy Financial Coaching. Our goal is simple: to help you run a therapy practice that is permanently profitable. If you own a solo or group practice, we're here to help you build a business that creates more time, makes more money, and serves more people. This is the Therapy Business Podcast. All right, Eric, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
Good, Craig. So happy to be here to talk with you about this.
Yes, me too. So I know you're an expert when it comes to just helping people grow and expand beyond themselves. And so, but first of all, I want to learn more about you. What do you do? Tell us about your business. What's your area of expertise? We want to get to know Eric a little bit.
Great. Well, so yeah, my name's Eric Williams. I'm the founder and CEO of Willity. We help business owners really navigate that transition from solo to small team, or from solo to just standardizing enough of your business to get some leverage, to start to move in that momentum of growth. Really helping people get out of their schedules, get out of the day-to-day grind, and start to standardize, operationalize their business so that it's more manageable. They get their sanity back, they get their time back, they get their life back.
Man, that's so important. I think of my own journey. For years, I was the one seeing clients. I was the one doing the marketing. I was the one creating graphics for social media. I was doing the sales call. I was doing everything. And it was really hard for me to change that mindset into, okay, now I need to start bringing some people in to take that load off my plate. Is that something you see a lot, that it's, I don't know if it's scary, or there's probably a bunch of emotions, but do you see a lot of people who are afraid to make that transition from just solo into having a team?
Yeah. And I think that there's a couple of stages that we can talk about here too. When people are just embarking on a solo practice, it can be overwhelming, the amount of business operations and admin stuff that they all of a sudden have to do that they didn't have to think about when they were part of a bigger practice. And they start to take that on. And so that's maybe the first challenge, is just taking all that on and recognizing how much extra time that takes. And actually getting processes in place, getting routines and practices so that you keep it within a bounds, whatever bounds you need that to be, to generate new clients. When you're first starting out, you might need to spend more of your time on marketing, bringing in new clients, right, until you fill up your calendar. And so you kind of adjust it. But what I find in that transition from solo to starting to build a team is, and the reason I started with going from a practice to solo, is because people tend not to want to take on all that admin and operation stuff. But then once they start to bring on a team, they hold it really tight. So that's the biggest part of the transition, is they hold on to it a lot of the time and don't want to let it go. This is common among many other small business owners as well, when you're going from solo, and especially for folks who are technical experts, who love the craft. They love what they do. When you're in therapy, when you're focused on seeing clients and that's what you love to do, and that's where your area of expertise is, even then, that transition to solo to a small team, sometimes people hold on to it because most business owners start to, feel like this is their baby. They want to protect it. They want to hold on to it. They want to make sure it's done right. But holding on too tightly can actually keep you from getting to where you want to go. And so for therapy practices, that's serving more clients, having more people go through transformations that you help facilitate, have insights into their own life and experiences. And by holding on too tightly to the business, you actually prevent you and your growing company from being able to serve more people and help more people, right? So there's a bit of a mindset shift in terms of what it means to grow and be able to move into that space. But at the same time, recognizing that, as you grow, you can build in standard practices, processes, start to document them so that when you're ready to pass them off, and you don't have to pass everything. It's not like you go through this transition, you're one day a caterpillar, one day you're a butterfly. It's a slow and steady piece where you can delegate one thing. Like, when we're talking about putting together all the marketing materials, putting together the graphics. If that's taking up 5 hours of your week, for example, is that something you can delegate off your plate and free up 5 additional hours, maybe 4, with the differential of being able to manage someone to do it, being able to go in and read and review, right? You're not delegating 5 hours means you get back 4 hours because you still need to supervise that person, right? So if you think about the math that's involved, that's one of the other places where people get a little confused about what are they doing? How are they moving stuff off their plate? But think about those buckets. Like, you can move pieces off one at a time. It's important to delegate enough time to manage people as you're moving it up, making sure you course correct early and be able to, supervise them enough and give them enough direction and give them enough support so that you're not just saying, just hire someone one day and say, go make my social media graphics with no extra, context, background, stuff that's been done in the past. Like, if you don't give them a package to be able to pass off to someone, or, if you as the business owner, as the practice owner, don't give who you're hiring enough context, enough that kind of package around delegation, then that's what people get frustrated when they're trying to hire someone new and just they give them too much leeway, and then are surprised when they're not coming back with the results they're looking for. So giving them enough bounds, enough of the context, so that you can delegate stuff effectively within the context of what you're looking for.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I had when I was by myself, I would like to consider myself a visionary, creative type, and so processes and systems, I love them because I need them, but that's just not my natural where I gravitate to. And so for years, I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants. I knew what I was doing. It was all kind of here. I had spreadsheets all over the place, but nothing really solidified. And then when I started hiring people, it was kind of a wake up call in that, they need to know what I want. They need to know like what to do or how to do it. And it just being up in my head is not going to work. And so it sounds like what you're saying is almost preparing those little things so that when you do hire them, it's super clear what you want, what you expect. And so that way you can fully give it away to them. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you think about some things happen daily, some things happen multiple times a day, daily, weekly, monthly. Once you start getting out into weekly, monthly, sometimes annually, if you think about preparing your taxes, having to get your brain back into the space of this comes from here, this comes from here, this comes from here. It's time consuming to get your brain back up to speed. You basically have to relearn and refigure it out every time. And so what we're talking about when you do it preemptively is you're essentially saying, when I'm going through this process the first time, or this year, let's say, can I write myself a checklist? Can I write myself an outline? Can I record a video to my future self or someone on my team who's going to be doing it in the future to explain how this works while I'm going through it, right? So when I use the example of taxes, because it's such a long time horizon that people tend to forget over the course of a lot of, your life goes by over the course of a year.
Yeah.
And so there's things like that happen once a year, whether it's, licensing and certification, renewal, or other things that are kind of occasional and not regular, not like a daily, weekly occurrence. You can easily forget. Even weekly and monthly stuff, it's easy to forget in the interim time what that's involved. So I want to use this as examples of you can delegate to yourself in the future. You can start to build the processes for yourself so that you can get up to speed more in the future. But it's something you have to start to cultivate as you're going, to start to write down and document those processes as you're going.
Yeah, I think that's great. You're right. I file sales tax every year, and every single year I have to Google how to file sales tax, even though it's super simple. But it's just one of those. I do it one time a year, and I forget. I forget what website to go to. I forget all those little things, just because it's not top of mind. So as we're looking at people who are solo right now, and they're thinking, okay, I want to hire somebody soon, whether it's an admin or whether it's another clinician to work with, another therapist to work with their clients. What are some things people can do to prepare for that now? I'm sure there's a list of things they can do from now until they actually start interviewing or start hiring. What could they do?
Yeah. So as you said, Greg, one of the issues is really understanding where your time's going and what's actually the kind of ingredients to your week. To have a successful week, to have a successful month, you need to do X amount of marketing, you need to do X amount of admin, you need to do X amount of insurance billing, and X amount of client meetings, client appointments. And so having that visibility into what your schedule looks like actually gives you, you need to document the processes alongside, but it basically shows you where you can take chunks out of your schedule and where you can flex, right? So if it's something that you don't mind the admin business operations work, you might choose to hold on to that and hire a clinician because you want more billable hours, and there's going to be some amount of those hours that are going to go towards the overall business profit revenue. It could be that the admin stuff is really taking you much outside of your energy and your zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's really frustrating to you, you're not bringing. It might be impacting bringing your A game to your work with your clients too. And so understanding your energy levels, your tolerance around these things can help give you the visibility about what's actually going to be the most valuable for me to delegate. In some cases, if you delegate 5 hours off your plate, that person's going to be able to get it done in 1 hour, right? Because you might be dragging your feet through it because you don't like it and it's not in your area of expertise. Someone else might be able to do it quite fast. Similarly, it could be that someone else is going to take 10 hours to do something that you took 5 hours. That's something that's really common for entrepreneurs to get frustrated about, is someone else taking a longer time to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the math, who you're bringing on to do, let's say, an admin project, it could be that you could use, instead of those 5 hours, if you're billing 3 times, the hourly rate that it costs to delegate that time to, you're still making a benefit from delegating to that person, even if they take longer to do it. So I think not being too sensitive, you need to understand kind of what's the math around what you're delegating, how much money you're spending versus what you're able to bring in with unlocking new hours in your schedule. But that's how I would think about, because therapists are really on the revenue comes from billable hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime that you're not doing billable hours is time you're not making money, and it kind of offsets. Not that a lot of people are in this just for the money, but it's part of the equation. It's about the impact and the financial piece. And so thinking about where those levers are to think about in your schedule, what you want to change, where is it going to make sense for you to delegate stuff off your plate that you really don't like, that you don't do well, that someone else could perhaps do better.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think as a lot of therapists are thinking about hiring, and I see it's super common. So I was always told, and I don't know if this is what you recommend too, but a lot of people say the first hire should be an assistant, a VA, or some kind of person to help with those admin tasks. But what I think a lot of therapists find is they get to a place where they're swamped and their calendar is so full that they are either not able to take on new clients or they're just starting to burn out. And so their immediate reaction is, okay, I need to hire another clinician to come in. Not always a bad thing, but I think sounds like what you're saying is sitting down and kind of looking and saying, okay, yeah, my calendar's maxed out, but how many hours am I spending doing these admin tasks that maybe I could offload, and I could then in turn see more clients and make more money in that realm? Or do I really need to bring in another clinician? Am I burned out on seeing clients already and I need to bring somebody in? So I think to kind of reiterate what you're saying, looking down and saying, what do I need to offload, or what would I like to offload on my plate right now? And that can maybe guide that first hire.
Yeah. It's a little bit harder to measure, but energy is part of the trifecta of what you're bringing to the table on your day-to-day, week-to-week. It's time. So you kind of think about the trifecta that I'm talking about is time, money, and energy.
Okay.
And so there's definitely times, I'm sure, Craig, you've had this situation where you just fly through work. Like you're able to sit down, you're able to focus, you just fly through it. It feels like hours go by and you get a ton done. And in very quick amount of time. Other times you're kind of like watching the clock and hours go by and you still haven't gotten this thing done, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when I think about energy and focus that you're bringing. That's one of the biggest variables in the equation, is how much time and focus or energy and focus you can bring to the equation on the specific tasks. And so that's why you might want to think about stuff that's you're not bringing the energy to. That's where you could easily hire someone who does love to do that. When we talk about hiring too, it doesn't always have to be a full-time hire. A lot of people think that it's this big leap from solo to another full-time person, but there's ways to structure your business so that you're bringing on, a part-time clinician. You can bring someone on for 10 hours or 20 hours earlier on, or you can outsource some of your marketing to an assistant or an expert in that, where it's 10 hours a week or so, or just like a regular monthly kind of billing arrangement for whether it's hours or kind of a scope. there's ways to do this incrementally. And so I think
Mm.
that's why, without it being a huge jump from solo to not solo, it's more of a, you can break this up into smaller steps, start to, test the waters. You can have a team of 4 or 5 people who kind of equate to another full-time person, but you could have actually a mix of people who are working part-time in your business as you grow.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I love that. I wrote it down. The energy side is such a good litmus test of what you should offload. Because again, I'm just kind of reflecting on my path from solo to people was. As my calendar got so full and clients couldn't get booked on it, I kind of looked down. I was like, the things I was procrastinating are the things I was like, those obviously are the things I don't want to be doing right now. And I would sit there doing them, and I started just generating a list before I was ready to hire a VA. I was like, okay, this is something I could offload. And so by the time I hired somebody, I had a nice list of things that I was eager to get off of my plate. And then same with once it got to a point where I was so busy that I was procrastinating client work where I'm going, okay, our clients would be so much better taken care of if I had somebody starting to take on the future clients. So just realizing what am I putting off all the time? What am I dreading? Am I looking at my calendar in the morning and saying, oh, I've got 5 client sessions today or whatever. If I'm feeling that, it sounds like that's a good litmus test for, okay, this is probably something I need to start making a process to offload off my plate.
Yeah. The energy is we don't talk about it all that often, and it's a little bit more ephemeral in terms of a thing. It's harder to measure, but that's exactly right. Where if you're dragging your feet on something, that should give you some indication about, let me figure out what to do with this. And one of the things that's one of the biggest worries that I have with business owners, a lot of the kind of red flag, warning signs is being overworked and overwhelmed. And it's kind of a natural ebb and flow as you're growing your practice to kind of hit those stretch moments where you don't quite have enough time and you need to figure out what the next steps are. The warning sign is when you live there for too long.
Yeah.
Because, as many therapists work with clients around overwhelm and burnout, it can very easily happen when you're running your own business if you're not mindful about when you're hitting your stretch moments. Because something that can happen is that a busy week turns into a busy couple weeks, a busy month, a busy 6 months, a year, and you're still working 60, 80 hours trying to accommodate everything. And when we talk about energy, this is why this is a good kind of pulling in the energy piece, because what happens when you're overworked and burnt out is your productivity goes down. And it's not just about your productivity, your energy level goes down. You're bringing, what I like to say is it's like bringing 50% productivity to this problem. And so you might be working 80 hours a week at 50% productivity. And so that really means you're only working 40 hours a week, right? So it doesn't, when you're doing billable hours with clients, it may, you still have to show up, as 100% as you can be in those moments. But when we think about when you get overworked, burnt out, and in that zone, that's where it's a danger zone, because you start to get into a downward spiral of not having enough energy to focus, operating at 50% capacity, dealing with the brain fog, dragging your feet through more tasks, which means you need to work late again that night to catch up, which means you're not sleeping, which means that the next day your brain fogs, you're at 50%, right? So you can get into the spiral where even just a busy week, if you don't have that rest and recovery time after, if you don't kind of snap back into something that's sustainable, that it can start to snowball if you don't kind of make a plan and move quickly. So the biggest warning signs I see with clients of mine is when they go too far into that burnout zone, and they have trouble walking it back because of this, because they need to start, there's ways to do it. There's ways to get into the upward spiral, but you have to start taking, essentially slow the downward spiral, put the brakes on, start to put like a new automation here, save few hours here, another 5 hours here, and just start to work your way back up. So it's a little bit you have to gain the momentum back, but first you have to stop the downward slide, start to move it back up the spiral, so you can start working towards unlocking more freedom and time in your business.
Yeah. I think a lot of therapists, no one teaches therapists in grad school how to run a business. And you and I were even touching on this just a little bit before we started recording, of going from, I'm working for another practice, another firm, and then I decided to go on my own. And then you're starting to build up this solo practice. Then all of a sudden you're going, okay, now I need to grow a team. It's a lot of times it's just, we're kind of just flying by the seat of our pants. We don't even know, like, when you got their degree in therapy, they maybe didn't think about owning their own practice. Maybe it was just like, okay, great, I'm going to go get a job and do therapy. So all these things we kind of fall backward into. I had no intention of having a team. I used to be a teacher, and I would just dream of being able to work for myself and go to Target at 10:30 in the morning on a Tuesday without having to worry about anything. That was as far as my dream went. And then all of a sudden I reach a point where I'm at that place of burnout and I'm going, okay, now I need to fix it. So I think hearing this for people who are maybe not quite at that burnout place, this is really helpful to say, maybe it's time to start thinking ahead before you reach that place. So that's what we see a lot is it's man, I am stressed. I'm burnt out. I'm tired of this. And this job is, trading hours for money. And so the only way to make more money is to get more burnt out. And that's when we start trying to hire. And it's just kind of a crazy situation. Whereas maybe if you start hiring before you're ready, is that kind of like maybe starting that process or that thought process? Is that kind of what you recommend doing?
Well, I'd maybe push back on that. I usually, if there's something that I'll also teach, which is don't build your systems until you need it.
Okay.
Because if you pre-build things, I'm forgetting the quote, but it's basically if you build kind of an imaginary system to handle an imaginary future problem, it's not going to work. It very rarely is your solution going to be the right solution for that because the pain points, the frustrations are different once you're actually there. And your life might look different, right? Like when you design it, when you are kind of starting out and say, when I get my business to five clinicians, it's going to look this way. Well, it might look very different. Maybe your life looks different. You have a kid in between or two in between, you may have different constraints, different challenges. So all those things kind of don't overplan on the front end is what I'm saying. But build as you go because it's easier to understand what your constraints are. And absolutely the stress points, the growing pains from 0 to 1 or 2 is going to be different than the growing pains to 5 or 6 is different from the growing pains up to 10 or 15 or 20. And so it looks different for every business, but you generally want to think about, you kind of build for the next stage of your business and you can anticipate ahead, say, I want to bring in some leeway here. I want to bring in some flexibility in this process so that when I get to that point, I can flex into, jumping up from 2 to 5, right? Mm-hmm. So you can anticipate it, but I wouldn't say don't build for it exactly. Build as you go, because then you'll be responding to real problems that you're dealing with. I see this a lot of the time when people are doing kind of figuring out their technology and solutions. And we've recently introduced a kind of a tech platform backend that's also, speaking of therapists, HIPAA compliant as well. But speaking of having all your stuff in one place so that you can manage your tech and tools, a lot of people might, when they're kind of starting out, say like, I need this tool, I need this tool, I need to whether it's invoicing, billing, they might get a really fancy tool anticipating the need for it, but it's actually maybe designed for like 100-person company or 1,000-person company. And it's like good at that level, but it's really not good for kind of the incidental, like using it once or twice a week or a couple times a month, right? So figure that, I use the technology and tools example for that reason too, because sometimes when you build things out, you want to build for kind of what you have, what you're anticipating having over the next 6 months to a year, understanding that you need some room to move, room to grow, but you don't know what the problems and stress points are going to be until you're actually there. And there's some experts who know the path ahead, what it's going to look like, give you some visibility there. But at the same time, if you don't know where it's heading exactly, just build it as you go and identify it, but be flexible and nimble about recognizing where your pain points and stress points are, and don't let them linger too long. Yeah. Right. As you said, like if you let them linger too long, they can come back to bite you. So just be mindful, aware of what's going on in your body, how you're responding, how you're emotionally responding to different things in your business, and just make a plan for how to tackle that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the tech analogy is so spot on. I've worked with really small businesses who maybe they got HubSpot as their CRM because they're thinking, as we grow one day, then we don't have to change CRMs down the road. And I'm we're going, yeah, but the cost of changing CRMs down the road is going to be a lot less than you pay in years for something that is just way too big for what you need. So I think that's really great. Just kind of almost like keeping a great pulse on where you are. Where are we today? Being realistic with that. And yeah, having an idea of where am I headed. But, I think I didn't know who I was going to hire the first time. And when I hired Alicia, our person who took over the whole personal finance side of our business, she came in with all these ideas and processes and systems that she created, which are far better than anything I would have created. And so to your point, yeah, if I had sat down and tried to map everything out, I either would have hindered what could have been, or it would have been time wasted because she would have come in and again, done something 10 times better that we would have just thrown mine out anyway. So, yeah, I like that idea. It's this kind of balance of stay in your place now, but also keep in the future in mind so you're not caught off guard when it comes.
Yeah, right. And I think there's a level of mindfulness in there too, or intention that you bring to your business, right? Because if you had locked yourself into a very specific vision of your business, you might have not found her to hire, right? It could have been, or it could have just been that, going through the hiring process, a new hire might feel too constrained in not, in the kind of process. And that's why it's a balance, right? Because I talk about systems and process a lot, but the intention around it is to create enough support systems in there so someone's not lost and flailing in a new job, where they have enough of your vision for the business, your background, what you're bringing to it. You've downloaded enough of your kind of mental decision-making framework so that they understand how you make decisions. They're not just kind of guessing and hoping that they're aligned. You've communicated enough, you've built it into the structure enough that they can make an approximately similar decision with the values that you bring to the business, the intention you want to bring to the business. And so that's why we're trying to talk about capturing enough, but not too much of the systems and processes in your business, so that you have flexibility, but you also have the ability to train someone up quickly so that they can jump in and do this stuff.
Yeah, you're speaking exactly into what I've been focused on this last quarter, and what my coaches have been guiding me through is how to articulate my vision to my team, how to not only create a vision of where I want to go, but make it to where they know where we want to go, and they can help create that path, but also know, what those expectations are. This year, we always have a theme for the year. This year was client experience. How can we improve client experience and make that the forefront? And next year, we've already decided is going to be systems and processes of how can we create these processes in order to reinforce that. When it comes to sharing your vision with your team, do you have any tips there for how to take this kind of, I'm going to call it intangible. Yeah, you can have we want to help people pay off this X dollars in debt, or we want to help this many patients, but how can you take a vision and help your team kind of get behind it, or articulate it to your team in a way that makes sense?
Yeah. And I think the disconnect is where it doesn't show up in the day-to-day operations. Sometimes when I'm teaching kind of bigger companies around organizational management and team management, employees' experience really happens on the front lines of their work, with their team, with their manager, right? So if you have a small team, it's really you as the manager and their day-to-day experience with you, and maybe with some other people on the team, right? But you want to create the measures of success, how people are being evaluated for the success of their own work, the benchmarks, make sure they're aligned with the values that you have in the business, that you're measuring the right things for the right kind of intention, as well as the day-to-day practice. And so if you think about the values that you want to bring to the business, are those being manifested in the way that you're interacting with clients, the templates that you have to communicate with clients, the expectations on client follow-up? And so it's really building out the systems and processes in your business is a reflection of those values. Because when you're solo, you're really doing it all yourself. Yeah. And so you build your business based on your own value system, your own vision for the business. And so you are manifesting that into the process already. It's just that once you hire other people, you need to tell them what that process is. You need to give them enough of the framework so that they can do it the same way. So when I talk about the mental framework, when you're starting a business and you have the vision for what it can and should be and how it should be run, it's an amalgamation of your lived experience, your professional education, your professional work, your upbringing, all sorts of things that are in this kind of kind of messy algorithm, like I call it an algorithm or equation or a framework. Your brain's running this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the filter that you're running through a variety of frameworks in your brain to get to the outcome, the solution, what you think is the right way to handle this solution. You want to download enough of that so that people on your team can make decisions that are aligned with the values that you have. And so that means, if it's a client's coming back to contest a payment for a session, or how would you want them to handle that? Like, use that as an example of, maybe a little bit tense, higher pressure situation. How would you handle it? Why are you handling it that way? What decisions are you making? It feels like instinct, but what decisions are you making to say, oh, we should do this or we should do this?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in those moments, this is why some of these things are quite hard to kind of pull out and dissect. And when I work with clients, this is the fun part of the work, but also a challenging part to kind of, you have to tease out, like, how are they making decisions in their brain about what's the right outcome here?
Yeah.
Because when I go back to saying, entrepreneurs get frustrated when they delegate stuff and people don't come back with the same type of quality of work or the same, the outcome. It doesn't mean everybody you hire is going to be perfect. There's plenty of people who aren't good at their job, or finding the right person can be a challenge to find the right fit, or eventually you find the right fit with the right kind of hiring practices. But all that said, assuming you have all that right, you can still fall down when you don't communicate effectively with people on your team. And part of that is communicating enough of how you make decisions, how you want to see those decisions play out. You don't have to micromanage it, but giving them enough of the structure about the values, the process, the decision-making piece that you've thought and dissected enough of how you make decisions so that you can communicate that to your team and say, this is why I want to see this done this way. This is why we should handle this, this type of situation this way. And that's when you can start to build in those kind of what feels like intangibles, but it starts to be built into the practice of the business. And ideally in the written kind of policies and procedures, but at least in kind of the cultural practice of how the work gets handled in the business.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I err on the side sometimes of being afraid of micromanaging. So that is really, really helpful in just the little thing. Like, it's almost, to me, I don't want to micromanage so much that I probably don't. There's times where I find that I'm not supporting enough. They don't, I'm leaving them out to dry in the way of how would I handle if a client wants to cancel their coaching program early, or a million other things. Like, how would I handle those things? Creating almost like a toolkit for them to access. And you're right, it's not a read this script verbatim, but it's here's how I would handle it so that they feel supported and equipped on how to approach those things. Once again, things you just don't think of. And I think that kind of goes back to your point that by planning too much, some of these things just kind of arrive and you realize, oh, wow, I need a process for this. Like, this is a great opportunity to create a little system or a standard operating procedure, or something that our team can lean back on.
Yeah. That's a good way to reframe it too. It's not about micromanaging the team. It's about giving them enough support so that they don't feel lost, so that they have enough of the tools to go back in and rely on when they are in those moments, because it helps support them in making independent decisions as well. It's not wholly independent because they're using your toolkit. They're using the framework for the business about how to make decisions. It's just that they have something to fall back on and use as a guide for when they're making those decisions. Because ideally, you're helping your team not involve you in every single decision, right? And so that's why, if you want an outcome, your vision for this business, you want an outcome a certain way, you need to be able to communicate. Your team needs to be able to do that separate from you. Because otherwise, if they're bringing you into every decision, then it kind of defeats the purpose of delegating, right? So that's why you need to equip your team with enough of the toolkit about how to make decisions independently, where their boundaries are, where their boundaries are not, where they have flexibility, where they do not have flexibility. That's all part of communication. So we normally think about communication as just something we do verbally, but it's the kind of package of stuff that we deliver, the package of support that we deliver to people on our team to be able to get the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's letting your team know, what does success look like to me? And I think that's everybody does things a million different ways. And so a team of clinicians, them knowing, okay, your definition of success is that you are arriving to your sessions 5 minutes early so that when your client logs on that you're already there waiting, or maybe it's your notes are submitted in X amount of days. So maybe they've worked for another team that notes were not due for a week. And for you, you're like, no, I want it done in 48 hours or whatever it is. So just being able to clearly articulate that, I think a lot of times there's probably disconnect purely from not letting them know what you expect or what you want from them. And it's not right or wrong. They're probably eager to do it. It's just, they just don't know. They can't read your mind.
Yeah. That's such a great example, because it can be something so small as like when you expect notes to be in the system. And sometimes entrepreneurs will say it's something to the equivalent of like, you're not doing it fast enough. And so the clinician's left to say, well, so then what's fast enough? I don't know. Yeah. Does it need to be done in 5 minutes? Does it need to be done in a day? Is it that a week was too long, but 6 days is fine, right? Like that's the frustration that a lot of people on teams experience when there's a lack of communication, a lack of clarity and specificity. When you need specificity, communicate specificity. When you have when you don't have boundaries, communicate that they're free to make a decision within, about this thing without too many boundaries, right? Like tell them where the boundaries are, where they're not, so that they know clearly what to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Eric, I could talk to you about this forever because I'm learning a lot. I've already taken a lot of notes myself, but for time's sake, we may need to pick up this conversation another time for another episode, but I would love to direct people to you because I know what you're speaking about is resonating with a lot of practice owners. And it sounds like even not only the ones who are going solo to group, but I think a lot of those group practice owners out there who are hearing what we're talking about and you're going, just like I am here, I'm going, okay, I could definitely grow in this area, or I don't have processes, or, oh, no wonder they're not doing what I'm thinking because I haven't articulated it. So all these things, tell us about how people can get in touch with you. How can they work with you? Yeah. Where can we send people?
Yeah. The best place is my website, willity.com, WILLITY.com, little play off my name and Will plus ability, but for people to remember it. But so I have a couple webinars on there to walk through how do you streamline and create a sustainable business as well. And so people can reach out to me through there if they want to talk about their business, dig into, what's stopping them from moving into this phase that they really want to in their business. Happy to hop on the phone and do a 45-minute call to really dig into those things. And that's probably the best place, right? Anybody can benefit from just some time to talk with someone with expertise to dig in, make a game plan for how to move forward.
Thanks for joining us on the Therapy Business Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a practice owner that you may know. If your practice needs help getting organized with its finances or just growing your practice, head to therapybusinesspod.com to learn how we can help.